Good evening and welcome to Living in the Promised Land, an immigrant rights podcast. I'm your host, Mark Schmorley, and I'm doing this very short update to follow up on our interview yesterday with retired Judge Denise Slavin, where we talked about her work with Alligator Alcatraz, and we talked about the immigration court system, and we also touched about on the issue of the practice right now of sending people who are granted what's called withholding of removal to third countries. And so Judge Slavin and I talked about how it was sort of an unheard of area of immigration law and practice, certainly on any systemic or large scale operation, to send somebody who's granted withholding of removal to any other country in the world. So, just to repeat what we've talked about, if you're granted asylum, which means you have a well-founded fear of being persecuted on account of five grounds: your race, your nationality, your religion, your political opinion, or that you're a member of a recognized social group, then you can be granted asylum, which is protection under international law in the United States. And after a year, you can apply for a green card, and you can also bring family members, both from overseas and, you can, and within the US. And so, withholding of removal is the next step. And withholding of removal, you have an order of deportation, which we have learned quite a bit from Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, really instructs in this area. And withholding of removal is mostly for people who are ineligible for asylum. And the central reason, the majority of cases, are people who applied for asylum after 1 year. And the purpose of making that law, the purpose of adding that into the law was because in the 1990s, when they made, when this was became part of the Refugee Act, it amended what was the Refugee Act, and it was part of IRA, which is the awful law we always talk about. Congress was concerned that people were applying for asylum really to get work permits and to stay in the United States in a protected status while their application lingered for several years. And the idea was that these were really not strong or credible applications, and that this would dissuade people if they couldn't apply after 1 year. Congress was also very clear to say that they did not want this to foreclose on legitimate claims for protection. So I had a case earlier this year where I was explaining to the judge it was great that they found the well-founded fear of persecution. It has to be a more than 50% chance. It's a higher standard than asylum to get withholding of removal, but that the punishment for my clients applying after 1 year was very harsh compared to the fact that people were being sent to third countries, which was an unheard of policy before. So it's a real danger. And the judge felt that, okay, this is protection. And in the past, it had been. And I think in this case, the judge didn't really, when you're working inside the government, you're not looking at things as holistically in the same sense. And you're certainly not bucking policy. But, we could see this coming on in February, March, when this case ended. And okay, so in the case of Abrego Garcia, he was granted withholding of removal by Judge David Jones in the Baltimore Immigration Court. I'm familiar with Judge Jones. He's a conservative individual. He's a very fair person. He's a very kind person, and he is somebody who is very respectful to those in court before him, even if he's not where I would be on the law. And I'm not surprised that he really listened to what the government was saying about their previous accusations that he was a gang member and his claim was false, and et cetera, because the government didn't really put up any fight, from what I understand, in that case. And it was just that Kilmar Abrego Garcia applied after 1 year, so that he was granted withholding of removal, which means that he can't be removed to El Salvador, but he can be, as we've learned, he can be removed to any other country in the world. So there's no real body of law which says, what does that mean? What does that mean? Um, and in every other area and every part of international refugee law, which comes out of it comes out of the Holocaust, it comes out of preventing people from being persecuted and having a safe place for them. And, before 1948, when, the United Nations really adopted these conventions to protect people on these grounds, it was the Wild West. The United States, as we used to learn in history books, and I hope people still learn. You certainly will learn if you go to the Holocaust Museum. The United States turned um, Jews away. They turned Jews away, and as did many other countries. They turned Jews away, and they said, "Okay, we're going to pay off some of the worst dictators in the hemisphere. So the Somozas in Nicaragua, the Batista regime in Cuba, the Trujillo regime in the Dominican Republic, and these were all three of them were multi-decade, in some cases, like in Nicaragua, multi-generational dictatorships, which were supported by the CIA, endorsed, put in the case of Somoza and Batista, by the and to some extent Trujillo too, complicated, but they were supported by the United States because they were anti-communist and it was the Cold War. So one of the things the United States did was they um, rewarded them for taking in Jewish refugees and others. And so, um, getting back to Abrego Garcia, uh, he was, um, he came from El Salvador. We know what happened when they sent him back to El Salvador. We know that it was inadvertent. They said it was accidental. Okay, probably was, but then they dug their heels in. When he came back to the United States, they charged him with human trafficking from a traffic stop that he had had before coming through Tennessee from, I believe it was Texas, where he was bringing allegedly bringing workers to a job site. This is a case they have. Um, we know that when he was in that case, the court ordered him released. That case is still going on in Tennessee, in a federal court in Tennessee, but he was released to be with his family in Maryland on bail, and the government gave him the offer to remain in jail, to plead guilty to that, and to be sent to a third country, meaning Costa Rica. So Costa Rica, the United States said, was offering Kilmar Abrego Garcia a um, to refugee status, to be resettled and to be able to live there, and we presume work. We don't know the um, details, if there were really any details, but Costa Rica is a country where they don't have a military. Costa Rica is not a country that one thinks of it. It's a democracy. It's a country. A lot of tourists go to Costa Rica. It's not a horrific place if they were to do that. And so his lawyers said, no, he's not going to plead guilty, though, and stay in jail. Because clearly they did not want to go through with this trial. And two, they they wanted him to plead guilty. And so then they could say, well, he's guilty and he left and good riddance and thanks to Costa Rica. So they didn't want that to come out. And they also didn't want him to come out because they realized that what would happen if he came out happened in Baltimore, where um, they filled what is a very big plaza, a place where I've been many, many times. It's where the immigration court is in Baltimore, and it's where the immigration service used to be. It's where ICE still is. So they filled the plaza. His fabulous attorney, Simon Sandoval Moschenberg, was there with him, as was Casa de Maryland, were religious leaders, from places I've been, and people that I, knew who were out there. Journalist Dave Zirin from The Nation was there reporting. And so it got national and international news. So ICE detained him. ICE said that because you didn't take that offer, we're going to send you to Uganda. Now, this is the scary part because Uganda is a country which has horrific human rights record right now. Um, People get asylum from Uganda. They've had the same dictator, Museveni, since I was in law school in the mid 1990s, because I actually did an asylum case as a law school fellow when Museveni was first in power. So he's been in power over 30 years. And it's a very repressive country. And so you're sending a man who speaks Spanish to a country where he doesn't speak the language, to a place he's never been, to a country that's not guaranteeing him anything, and to a country which could easily deport him to El Salvador. So this is unheard of. Um, and so the question is, like, I mean, the legal question is, what is the standard? So Abrego Garcia's attorneys filed in the immigration court two things. Two things. One, they said that if you're going to send him to a third country, nobody's contesting that you can't if withholding of removal is there, but you have got to give him the opportunity to say that it's more likely than not that he would be persecuted or sent back to El Salvador if he's deported to Uganda. And they need that opportunity. Rather, you can't just choose it. And actually, in 2020, this issue did come up in the Supreme Court, and Justice Sotomayor was questioning the government lawyer, and the government lawyer said, yes, there needs to be a process where you can show this. There needs to be evidence on each side as to why Uganda is safe, why a third country is safe. And so this case is actually a challenge to this practice of just saying we can send them to any third country without doing that. So this isn't a big deal on that issue. The other thing is they're arguing that because he just came back from El Salvador, that he's actually been here less than a year. And therefore, his most recent entry allows him to apply for asylum. And so they're asking the court to reopen the case to hear his asylum case. And they're arguing that he's not barred by this 1 year rule because he hasn't been in the United States 1 year when he applies for asylum. So this is before, I believe it's before Judge Jones. People are switched around. There's a lot of changes going. I believe Judge Jones is still there. Judges are dropping, as we learned from Judge Slavin yesterday, and I know from my experience, judges are quitting all the time. They're being reassigned. They're being, and sometimes they're just not there, and sometimes their dockets might be full, so it might not be before Judge Jones, but whoever that judge is will know. And unlike immigration court, as we learned yesterday, unlike a federal court where the public can see the filings in a federal court, and that's why you can see the filings in all of these cases, in all the alligator Alcatraz cases, the ones that are federal, I believe the ones that are state too in Florida, the other parts of Abrego Garcia's case that are in the federal court, the cases of the other folks we talked about, Rumisa Ozturk, Badr Kansuri, Mahmoud Khalil, all of these cases, you can read them in federal court. On their website, you can go onto the website of the federal court, but immigration cases are not publicly available online. They're just not. So I haven't read these. I know the attorneys. I know the firm. They're fabulous. I mean, they've got one great attorney after the other at Murray Osario, which is that firm. And so and I know that they've also got assistance from other sources, and we're a small fraternity. We immigration lawyers really do help each other. It's what really keeps us doing it, and we really are a small club. Some say a small club of sadists, but it really is it's really hard what they're doing, and it's really confusing. And and our goal on this podcast is not only to you know, bring people to you that you might not otherwise see, but also to deconstruct this case and others so that people can understand it. I mean, people are reacting, people are supporting. You don't need to understand everything to know that how outrageous this is, um, what an attack on our system it is, and what an attack on this individual and his family it is. And if you think about, his wife, you think about his family, you think about how scared they were when he was there in El Salvador. You think about the cruelty of Christine Nome, of Trump, of Vance, of Rubio, and you just imagine like what is wrong with them? Who are they protecting? Um, and not only, in my view, don't I want them protecting me, I wouldn't even know how to talk to them about it without feeling soiled. And I think this is the problem. And with these third countries, there are some countries agreed to do this at first. Some countries agreed, like Panama, and they just agreed. And then the government, though, didn't have any way to resettle people. And so the people that were originally deported to Panama, who were granted withholding of removal from other countries, and there's also cases of countries that won't take people, so they just send them there. Um, Panama was asking people to go to other embassies within Panama City to try to get repatriated to those countries because they weren't welcoming them. And then the the Congress, the legislature in Panama, put a hold on the government engaging in these agreements. Eswatini is used to be Swaziland in South Africa. They're taking some. Well, from what I understand, people that are going there are put in jail. South Sudan, one of the worst human rights records in the world, is taking and also engulfed in war and incredible poverty, has agreed, I'm sure, for favorable either not being tariffed or some other favorable agreement, with the U.S. government, um, has agreed. Um, Libya, it's murky. They agreed, but they haven't ever taken anybody. And Rwanda has an agreement which was leaked. So, these are the countries then we can watch people being sent to them. But in this case, I think in Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, the federal judge who had his case in Greenbelt, the judge whose case went to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court said that he had to be brought back, that judge, Jazinis, in Maryland, in Greenbelt, Maryland, federal judge, issued an order that after they detained Kilmar Abrego Garcia yesterday morning, they can't remove him until they have a hearing before her, and he's got an opportunity to explain why Uganda is not a safe place for him to go, and why he would, as I explained before, be persecuted if he went there. We think, this is the standard. There is no standard in the law because, again, this wasn't done. If somebody got withholding of removal, it was considered to be enough of a, you'd say, punishment, enough of a consequence of not being eligible for asylum, that you can't get a green card, you can't bring your family, and you can't travel. That was seen as enough. And so she's put a hold on it. Now people are asking, will the government just deport him anyway? The judge, Simon was on one of the news programs yesterday, and he said that the judge said, and this was a Zoom hearing, so there weren't other witnesses in the courtroom, but in the gallery watching. But Simon said that the judge asked point blank to the government, "You will not deport him, will you?" While my order is in place, because as we know, you know, it's wasn't hard to bring somebody back from El Salvador. They just chose not to. But if they deported him to Uganda, the reach of the U.S. government would be almost impossible, and it would be an outrage. But their hope would be, you know, I mean, it's at a point now where, shame doesn't matter. We know that there's no shame. We know there's no respect for law. We know that there is no reflection. We know that we're dealing with authoritarians, we're dealing with white supremacists, we're dealing with people who have already counted out appealing to anybody really but their own sycophants and fear. And so they're not trying to do anything. They're not trying to respect the law. They're not trying to respect a court decision, and they're not trying to be humane. And in fact, they're trying to do the opposite. So we'll see what happens. Um, I'll keep you updated. I think it's important that people also, if they have any questions or anything, our email is immigrant rights podcast at gmail.com. Shoot an email, comment on the on YouTube, rate us on Spotify. I think you can comment on Spotify also. But comment on YouTube. We'll bring any questions, any comments. We'll talk about them. Um, our goal is that people are able to understand what is an extremely complicated uh, system and convoluted system, and um, drop us a line. Drop us a line and be well. And this might be the last episode before Labor Day weekend, so have a good rest. We need to rest, and we need to resist, but we need to take care of ourselves and be there for your community. Again, be there for your community. I'm in DC. I'm really proud of the people in DC for fighting back. I'm really proud of the people in DC and the surrounding area for defending the immigrant community. It's hard. Um, we need you. We who are in the courtrooms and the immigration system, we need you, but we also um uh, you know, between you being out there and community speaking up, we're going to move the politics. We're going to move the politics, and and people are doing really great with it. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good evening. Again, also, our show is produced by Stephanie Boutois. It is the intro and outro were um, uh, performed by Insect Factory. Jeff Barsky, thank you.